Hi, I'm Melissa, and I'm going to show you how to dye some fabric today. Dip dyeing is really hot in fashion in the magazines. We dip dyed this jacket. It was a lighter color, and it looks really cool. And I'm going to show you an easier way. Instead of dip dyeing, we're going to spray the dye on the fabric. So what we're going to need for supplies is some natural fiber fabric, either liquid or powder dye, a squirt bottle with a squirt nozzle, a plastic shower curtain, and I also put some plastic on the floor. You can use newspaper to catch any drips, some salt, and some rubber gloves. This is what our fabric is going to look like when we're done dyeing. Use the rinse cycle in your washing machine to prepare your fabric for dyeing. You can also rinse it out in the sink. You can dye your fabric wet or dry. So after you have it rinsed, you're going to lay it out on your table with the plastic lining underneath, flat like this. And you're going to need to put on your plastic gloves and make sure that your dye is in the bottle like I have it here. And I'm going to go fill it with water. Now that I have my bottle filled with water, I'm going to shake it well to make sure all the powder on the bottom is wet. And before dyeing my original fabric, I'm going to test on a scrap piece of fabric. And if the dye color is too intense, you can add more water. And that looks about right, so I'm going to start dyeing. I already have fabric cut out for something I'm going to make. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to squirt the bottom third of the fabric until it's saturated. I'm also going to squirt this piece the same. Make sure you're watching your bottle and stop when you have a third left. Just a little bit more. And now I'm going to go fill my bottle up with water again.
My name is Julie Thompson, and a few years ago, actually when my kids were little, I started scrapbooking. That kind of led to making cards, and then that kind of led to just all kinds of paper projects. What I like to use now is vintage sewing patterns. This one is collaged with decoupage material front and back, all finished, ready to either hang up or put down. And then the latest one I did, I tried on a, what do you call it, masonite? This is the one where I obviously added the hair and the tattoos onto the model girl. I wanted to do a silhouette, and so I traced a sewing pattern girl, put her on the back of a home decorating magazine, I guess from the 60s or whatever, and then I love the back because I had this scrapbook paper. Clipboards are really popular. This is the one I personally like the best, is just taking the whole sewing pattern envelope and with a little "So Busy" tag on it and the little piece on the back. Company's name, and this is like really confusing to everybody, is Jane's Apron. My name's not Jane, I'm Julie. You know, if I were to do it again, I might pick a different name, but when I picked that name, I wanted something to be really simple, kind of like what I make, and so I thought the name Jane was simple, and I love aprons. And this was one I did also from the sewing pattern countering books again. I just cut the dress out and made it, I guess it's a little collage on a hanger, and then just take pieces of the pattern book and put it on there. I really do not ever have a plan. I did not plan to put tattoos on this girl. I thought the paper would like be tattoo-ish, and you know, so I asked my kids, should I put the tattoo on the neck over there? Yeah, so yeah, funny. I grew up in a house where we were constantly drawing or coloring or cutting or you know, my mom, you know, she still quilts every day, I think. My mom taught me how to cut with scissors, and she always says, move the paper, not your scissors. So I keep the real sharp, I never really use the tips of the scissors. I just keep the real sharp edge going and just kind of keep turning my paper around. And some of this paper is really delicate. You have to have a lot of patience. And I almost like kind of just zone out, really. I don't really pay attention after a while. Actually, I went to school and became an engineer and worked with a bunch of guys all the time, and I don't know. And then I retired a few years ago to be home with the kids and my youngest daughter when she was born. It's just something that I kind of got back into, just naturally, I think, from that long time off. So, but yeah, definitely not art trained or anything like that. They wanted to use my train case that I made as a sewing box on their set, which is a perfect match for what I made. I also made them a little clock because they wanted it in their kitchen, and so I've used the aprons, you know, the sassy girls with the aprons on, and made a little clock for them. The best place to read about what I'm doing or maybe what I'm working on or what I messed up is on my blog. If you do a Google on Jane's Apron, it'll come up. And I sit at this table sometimes, and then I store almost all of my stuff out here. So this is a thrifted dresser that I found and painted and just messed with, basically. But it's just full of all of my junk. I really work really fast because, you know, my kids go to school in the morning and I've got to do all that other stuff. And then when I do have a chance, I fly. I mean, I just cut paper really fast and throw stuff everywhere and then clean it all up and put it all away before everybody comes home to spill something on it. You have to seriously make the time to do it. I mean, if I can find the time to do some of this stuff, anybody can. Believe me, I have so many other commitments. It's insane, but yeah, it's something I really love to do, and so I make myself do it. Advice-wise, I would say to just be yourself, do your own thing.
I'm going to pull my fabric down carefully, and I put more water in the bottle to dilute the dye that was left. And now I'm going to spray the next third with this dye. And again, I'm going to leave the last third of the amount of dye left in the bottle so we can refill it again. All right, and I'm almost ready to refill. Okay, that's good. I always like to keep a scrap piece of fabric handy so I can test the saturation of the dye. I filled up my bottle once again with water, and I'm going to test for the last third. Now that looks a little too saturated for me, so I'm going to dump out a little bit of the dye and add some more water for less saturation. This should be good. So I'm going to saturate the last third of the fabric with the whole bottle. This is where you might get some dye over the edge. So get all the spots if you can. And once it's pretty much saturated, you don't have to use the rest of the bottle if you've got it all. Okay? And now I'm going to let it sit for an hour. Now that I have let it sit for an hour, I'm going to roll it up the long ways so the different colors don't mix. So I'm going to grab it by both ends and take it over to the sink. I'm going to take it over to my faucet and hang it over so that the dyes can drip out. Now that I've let my fabric drip for 8 hours, you're going to need to prepare a salt bath with 3 gallons of water and 1 cup of salt. You're going to dip your fabric into the salt bath to set the dyes, and then you're going to hang it over your faucet again until it dries completely. Don't forget to print out your complete project instructions that downloaded with this segment, and please check out DIYStyle.net. I've let the fabric dry for 8 hours, and here's the finished dyed fabric.
Here's a DIY style tip. It helps to know the difference between your cutting tools. First off, paper scissors have equal sized handles and a blade that runs in between them equally. Save these for cutting out your paper patterns. Shears have 2 different size handles and a bent blade so that when you're cutting out your fabric, it lays flat on the table. Pinking shears are used for finishing edges of your fabric and have a jagged edge. Embroidery scissors are used for trimming threads and getting in tight spaces, and it helps that the blade is sharp all the way to the end. A rotary cutter is great for cutting out garments and using a ruler with it to get a straight edge. Be very careful when using the rotary cutter because it is very sharp and can easily hurt yourself. Perfect 2-inch strip.